Welcome to Jacket Jockeys with Justin.
Me.
Hey, we're back
We're back where it all began.
talking about the jackets again, you know?
The show that started it all.
We took a big hiatus
Detour?
as a detour, as you like, as the show did.
Down a road that brought
Um,
us to a fallen tree.
We had a writer strike, and so there were delays.
It's
And
been
so
what is it? It's been 81 years. It's been a while.
I think
Missed it.
it's been a while. I think when did the last season come on? Now I don't even remember. I think it was 2023.
But watching it
Um
was as good as if it was as good as the first time. I loved
yeah, I
it.
think spring 2023. Anyway, whatever.
So good.
It doesn't matter. But yeah, there's Patreon requests. This is part of the CJEU, the Claude and Justin Extended Universe.
I've always wanted to be a part of someone's extended universe.
Yeah, well, congratulations. You that day has arrived. There was a request to do like a retrospective on the earlier stuff, especially like season one, because obviously we did talk about season
Oh, wait a
two.
minute. You didn't tell me that this was by someone's request. I would have taken it more seriously.
It was by someone's request.
Oh, okay.
Well, all right, get serious. I don't know. What can I say?
All right. Well, we'll have to pull out Robert's Rules of Order
Roberts. Oh, okay.
And
May I have the floor?
and the asparagus forks. No.
Oh.
Is there a motion to give the floor to Justin?
Now.
Hearing none, the motion is
Denied. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. I guess I'm not talking today,
Buzz,
so
buzz.
see you later. Yeah, anyway, I mean, this was like, I think this was back in October or so.
It's January.
Yes. October 2024. It's January 2025. Just for all you future kids in 2037 listening to this. Does that happen? We'll see.
Like the Benjamin Buttons.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, yeah, we should do that, but there was other stuff we wanted to do. Obviously, we talked about from season 3, and we talked about a couple of movies. So hopefully, you've
So now we
enjoyed
are back at our catalyst.
all that business. But yeah. It's fun. I mean, Yellowjackets is the what do they say? Raison d'être for this whole podcast. That's what the name
It's
comes
so
from.
good. It's so good. And watching the first season, so we've rewatched the first 6 episodes. So we will
5.
Oh, never mind.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
It's the first half.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So we've rewatched the first half of the first season, and so that will be primarily what we talk about.
Yeah.
But we will address things that come later. So definitely do not listen to this if you are not up to speed.
On Showtime's Emmy-winning, critically acclaimed horror drama thriller series Yellowjackets,
up to the present day.
now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Mhm.
Use promo code Jacket Jockeys for 20% off.
Oh,
See if it works. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know that it doesn't.
Maybe they'll throw us a sponsorship if we send them enough people. Who knows?
And speaking of Squarespace,
and what about MailChimp? Anyway, are they still around?
I don't know.
I haven't heard much about MailChimp.
I never really knew what MailChimp did. Don't tell me, I don't want to know.
Email?
So yeah, fine, but I don't. Anyway,
email from a chimpanzee.
Just
I'm not sure.
The
plan we have is to split the season. So we're not going to go like episode by episode. We're not going to go scene by scene. Sorry if that's disappointing, but for those of you who are like old school Lost Slowdown people, and I know there's some of you out there, this will be in the vein of those retrospectives that we did where we, we took a group of episodes and kind of talked about them generically. Generically is not the word, generally, I think is what I mean. Of course we can talk about some specific stuff, but anyway, just so you know, that's kind of what it's like, a freewheeling, let's like go through it. Definitely, I mean, we have seen the show up to date, so we may reference stuff from later for sure.
We definitely will.
We're not doing that like artificial bullshit thing that I hate when podcasts do, where they pretend like they don't know the later part of the show. I don't see any point in doing that. That seems
If
like a
it
waste of
seems
time.
like I am pretending that I don't know about what happens later, it's gonna be it's definitely not that I forgot about it. It's definitely that I'm
It's
pretending.
very genuine.
Yes. I put the gen in genuine.
Mm.
That's a
Do you
little
mean you put the gen and
the
genuine?
gen and gen. Oh no. Yeah, that's one thing that I've been struck by is how many of these actresses in this part of the show got recast
Yeah.
and or just I don't remember ever seeing them before.
Yeah. Aquila was recast. Gen was recast. Crystal is like doesn't even appear. She just kind of comes out of nowhere in season two. So yeah, definitely for the like second tier Yellow Jackets. I mean, to put it simply, the ones who definitely didn't survive. Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely got recast. Obviously, the ones who did survive, they are
Yeah,
keeping
yeah,
the same
yeah.
actors for those. But yeah, it's like they gave themselves some leeway with the idea that there's a team, and they kind of Nikki and Paulo'd it, like, oh, let's just like say these people are here, and like they were always here and they were
Yeah.
just in the background and we never saw them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um
What overall what has struck you about this first half of the first season? The
oh
rewatch.
man, that is such a broad and deep question. I can't
I
even
wouldn't call it
begin.
deep, but I will call it
I
broad.
can't I can't even begin to address it. No, what has struck me? So, I mean, I was gonna say this anyway, but like one thing I think is interesting about it is I definitely get the sense of the show's like organic development. Like, when you watch the pilot, you know, like there's this like quasi documentary structure happening, like coming from Jessica Roberts and all that. And I do think like it's a tough thing. Like, where's your entry point? For this, like, how do we get this started? How do we sort of establish that so like in Citizen Kane, the opening
Wow.
is that too much? I don't
No.
know. I feel like there's
If
something
anything, it's not enough.
I feel like there's a similar element here of like it skips around, and it starts off with this like news reel where we learn sort of the overall arc of what happened just generically. And then, the rest of the thing, like, interviews like specific characters and like develops the details, and we get a lot of flashback scenes and all that. And so I feel like it's like a little bit like what they're doing here is like giving us like a wider view. What do people who were not involved think about this? And they want to tell us that. And so it gives them a way to do that.
Yeah.
It does feel, at least to me, like a bit awkward going forward, like transitioning out, because like by episode three, they're kind of done with that idea. And the show is more just about the characters, and like
Yeah.
they talk about how the world sees them, and it does matter in the plot and so on. But like, I don't know, I feel like in retrospect, like I don't hate Jessica Roberts, but like I kind of feel like they don't do much. Like it's this like dangling thing that like there's even intrigue involved, but it never really matters much. And
Yeah, it's tough watching the Jessica Roberts scenes on the rewatch because you already know the answer.
yeah,
And actually, I forgot how so one of my observations, and this applies to Jessica Roberts and in general, is how early they introduce a lot of important stuff. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and actually you don't have to wait that long before you find out a little bit about Jessica Roberts. I mean, there's more to come, but I just remember the first time we watched it thinking like these because there are these other mysteries going on, and so it's like, what role does she have to play in these other things? And it's like, well, sort of nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
But not that it's bad, and but it's an unusual answer to the question of who she is. And so rewatching it, I'm not sure how well it holds up, but of course we do something else with her. So, which is still to come. But it's interesting what you said about those those perspectives of the kind of the world outside of the survivors, because the last episode that we watched in this rewatch, the most recent one we watched, ends with her with Shauna googling herself.
yeah,
And um and yet and we still haven't gotten yet Allie
yeah.
again,
Adult Alley, you
adult
mean?
Allie.
Yeah,
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 we
yeah,
see kid Allie, which I
yeah. In the
totally forgot
pilot,
about that.
yeah,
Yeah. Um
yeah.
but it's just oh man,
It's an
reliving some
interesting
of
thing.
this
I feel
stuff.
like in a way, Allie is almost like Frank. It's like I was supposed to be on that plane, but I wasn't because this
Yeah.
weird reason, you know. And
Yeah.
like she feels like her fate is intertwined with them, but in a way, she's kind of an outsider. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
It's
she's
interesting.
definitely an outsider. Yeah, she takes a really different kind of lesson or motivation away from that than Frank does.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
Frank, the pilot on Lost.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Jeff Fahey, y'all. Yeah, yeah, I just I think like I don't think the scenes are bad. I like the actor. You know, it's just it doesn't yeah, it doesn't add up to much, and I just think like it actually could have worked to just like throw us in. Like just throw us in with the characters and gradually we learn how the
Yeah.
outside world perceives
I mean,
them.
it is tough. How do you enter a story like this? I mean, you complain frequently about the like 72 hours earlier
Yeah.
kind of way of getting people into a
Yeah,
story,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Which, like, you could argue the opening scene is along those lines, you know. But of course, it's not 72 hours earlier. It's I don't know, a year earlier from the perspective of the past, or you know, whatever. Like, however you want to put that. But like, it's not something that we have even gotten to yet in the show. So if they've already spent 2 seasons getting to that point, I feel like that doesn't really count as 72 hours earlier.
yeah.
But it does sort of establish like
You're
here's the
talking about
stakes.
the
Yeah,
hunt or
the pit
the
girl scene
pit. Yeah, the pit
basically.
girl scene.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the pit girl scene, that's a huge tease. And yeah, the necklace and all of
The
that, the shoe,
necklace,
you know,
the
yeah.
costumes, Antler Queen, and the reveal of Misty as having been there and participated in the cannibalism and
Yeah, and she's the only person whose face we see, right?
yeah, yeah. The whole season, I think actually they don't actually specifically say who else was there besides like Misty's for sure, but like who else? And of course we know, you know, we know a lot of people who survived. So it's like, well, how else did they survive? You know? But I remember early on having ideas of like factions and like different groups, and maybe one group was hunting the other
Yeah.
group, or they were hunting each other, or you know, I had all sorts of like more complicated like ideas of what might have been happening in that opening scene that like what we learned through season 2, which you know in season 2 like they're all in it, they show all of them doing cannibalism in season 2
Yeah.
except Coach Ben, of course. Coach Ben's the only one who actually objects to it and you know goes his own path, which surely will lead to his own demise and probably to being eaten.
You know, I kind of want to roll the tape, except I would never listen to this podcast. I I want to roll the tape and hear what I said about Coach Ben, but I'm currently sticking to what I think I said then, which is that I want to find out the coach Ben actually somehow survived and got out separately, and it's just his
Oh
whereabouts are
man.
unknown to anyone. He's completely off the grid.
That would be a wild
Yeah,
reveal.
I'm all about the harebrained crackpot theory.
Because then, like, if something like that happens, then it raises the question of, hey, y'all, we told you, spoilers are coming. It raises the question of, do they know that he was the one who lit the cabin on fire? You know,
So
because
yeah.
I was assuming that they figured that out at some point. They hunted him down. That's my default assumption because obviously,
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot more sense, but just to put I mean you can finish that sentence.
it would just be crazy if, like, much like with Misty, destroying the fly recorder, which, like, as of now in the show, no one knows about except Misty herself. And it just feels like it's this.
Yeah, and we'll never know if they would have found them if she hadn't destroyed the flight recorder.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
really know
yeah.
how those things work.
I don't know how
Um,
those things work either. It's possible that it didn't matter at all, but nonetheless, she thought it mattered clearly by the
yeah.
scene, right? So I feel like in a way it's the thought that counts as much as like what the
Yeah.
reality was, because the scene is framed of like she feels useful, she feels accepted in a way she wasn't before, and she's like, you know what? I like this. This is better. So fuck getting rescued. Like, I want to stay here, based on what happens later, I don't know if, maybe she regretted it eventually, but um,
Yeah.
I just think like it is still a betrayal, even if practically it didn't matter,
No, certainly,
you
certainly. Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and we with her kind of yeah, we see a big arc, well, not a big arc. That implies progress. We see a sort of ebbing and flowing of her sense of control or admiration or whatever in this 5 episode arc from this when the crash happens and she's the one who knows everything and she overhears this admiration from the team of I don't know where we'd be without her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's
uh
got like first aid training, and so she's able to do stuff that they're like,
yeah,
what are you like, what?
yeah. And then we see over the progression of these weeks that some of the other players and uh and Travis as well, become more uh important to their survival, hunting and taking
Mhm.
care of stuff. And then we see this scene where who is it, is it Aquila who like knows the mushrooms that you can eat and the berries you can eat,
Oh, yeah,
and
right. Yeah.
Misty is just not special anymore, and then she
Yeah.
tries to poison the coach, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm totally in love with you too, but like, let's just keep it a secret because like it can't happen. It's not right, This is just forbidden love, and we just need to like accept that and try
yeah.
to move on. It's gonna be hard for both of us, but just,
It's beyond comprehension to try to imagine being in Coach Ben's position, like realizing there's this sociopathic child who's sexually obsessed with you and
Yeah,
trying to keep you physically dependent on her
yeah,
when you're already in this extremely vulnerable position. Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I forgot, like, she's the one who actually cuts off his leg. Like, that's
Yeah, but I mean, I
where that
think
all starts.
there I do think she was right to do that.
Oh, I think she was right too.
Um,
It's just an interesting detail in that
yeah,
whole saga that, like
yeah.
she but yeah, Aquila, I believe Aquila is the one who sews up Van and does a fucking bang up job. Because
Oh,
it's real hard to tell.
Yeah,
And so yeah, she sort of becomes like the other one who can do like quasi medical stuff. Like they do kind of
got it.
address that in season two, you know. And I feel like she's actually she's the one with Nugget too.
Yes.
So yeah, she gets like more time, more screen time in season two than season one. Though she is named and she has scenes in season one. She's not like absent. But I think yeah, they brought her more forward in season two. Um but yeah, it's interesting. I also I think you know, I would be I can't we can't do a thing like this without just directly addressing the opening scene of the fact that that's still a mystery, even though like just by like looking at the characters and looking at what we see, like it seems like Mari is the only option who it could
Yeah.
possibly be, unless they're gonna pull out some rando who has like sort of the same basic like look, you know. And like, there's no reason to think Mari survived. We haven't had any indication of that. And also, like, more so in season two than this season, I think. But like, they portray her very negatively. And
Yeah.
I mean, I thought she was gonna die in season two, but yeah, obviously they're slow rolling that thing. And if she's gonna do the pit thing, then it needs to wait until they're like deeper into the ritual of it
Yeah.
all, which we only get the very first
Yeah,
version
I
of.
mean, that's an issue for me with the ritual and the pit girl stuff is that there just aren't that many of them.
Yeah.
And so for them to have, I don't know, maybe this is like an anthropological take on the whole thing where it isn't appropriate, but for them to really of develop this whole thing with costumes in the pit and whatever, it feels like it should have more instances than we have people. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think I don't remember what the result was, but I think I remember reading an article where they did some kind of calculation of how many calories, you know, there would
Yeah.
be approximate and like how many of them would be needed for how many for the number of them that we know
Mhm.
to survive, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think they're playing a little fast and loose with it. On the other hand, um, you know, they're said to have been out there, and you know, again, I my TV training has taught me to not be too obsessed about timelines, not to be too
Yeah.
precise about these things. Nonetheless, they did say 19 months, which is, you know, I mean, that's a little over a year and a half. And they crash, presumably like at the end of the school year. Um, and so, and
Yeah.
we
We've
see them
discussed this before,
arrive there in the
right?
summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, my point is that they go through another summer for sure.
That's yes, exactly. So
So there could
we
have
can
been a period.
assume, yeah. So in the summer, catch a lot of
Yeah.
deer, other animals. Maybe they can preserve some of that stuff in
Yeah.
some way.
I'm wondering how they roll with that, you know? It seems awkward because like the winter is the desperation time. The winter is the time, and they show that very clearly in season two. And at the end of season one is when we get the first snow. That's when Jackie freezes to death. That whole thing happens, you know, and so they very clearly established that we've reached that point, but it's not gonna last forever, you know. Even in
Yeah.
Canada, winter isn't forever. And so like you know, at a certain point, it's going to be like, you know, you would think there would be wildlife again, and you would think that, you know, so I'm wondering how do you transition out of cannibalism, you know, after you've already made it a thing and you've already like, you know, committed to
My,
it?
I mean, for me, it's more like how do you transition back to it?
Yeah,
You
fair
know,
enough. I
because
mean,
then
I'm happy with that too, but it
yeah.
just seems awkward to me at a certain point to be like, oh yeah, let's not eat each other for a while. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's
I
easy.
mean, deer don't hibernate. I'm
Mhm.
just saying.
Yeah. I mean, we do see a moose in season two, you know. I mean, that goes along with that whole hobby thing. You know, they're trying to get that moose, you know,
Right.
it's all tied in, you know.
Right.
So there is still wildlife, but yeah, they portray it as like it's more scarce or whatever. They're harder
Yeah.
to get, and just being outside is more punishing. I doubt they packed a lot of winter clothes for obvious reasons.
Right.
So they just gotta like make, like, so
Yeah.
I can see practical reasons why it would be harder to do hunting in the wintertime, even though, yeah, what you're saying is
Yeah,
true.
they have, yeah, they do talk about the clothing problem.
Yeah.
But that's down the road. We're not there yet.
It is very down the road.
Um,
But I feel like it's hanging over the
yeah,
flashbacks, like this opening scene, it continues to be
right,
a thing. And like,
right,
in terms of speculation, will they catch up to
right.
this in season three? I mean, I think it's a possibility. I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, I mean, I do think
Is it
they,
in the second winter? Is it in the first winter? Like, I don't really
mm,
know, you know? Because
yeah,
I think by the timeline they should go through two winters.
yeah.
The second winter might be shorter than the first. Like they might get rescued in the middle of the second winter. I mean, that's what the timeline would suggest. You know, getting rescued like December, January, something like that. You know, I know they have that scene with Lottie after they get rescued. At the
We're not talking about these episodes that we
No,
watched.
I know, but I'm jumping off from the opening scene and just thinking about how they're going to address that and trying to put that together with what we have seen, just to try to have it make sense, you know. And I don't remember. I think they did actually show a year for that. Not that that helps that much, but I feel like they did. I could be wrong. We'll see when we watch it again. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I feel like that's, when I listen to podcasts, they talk about that scene a lot because it's like
Yeah.
the opening mystery, it's sort of like what happened right before Jack opened his eye. I don't know if anyone was thinking about that, but it's along those lines, and they did address that, but it was like season 4 before we found that out,
Mhm.
you know. So anyway, I just wanted to dwell on that for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah, yeah. I think like my memory of it, well, anyway, it doesn't matter, but I think that we had a pretty robust conversation about the pit girl scene after we recorded the last podcast about this with like a fresher perspective on what had come
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm
after.
sure that's true. It
So,
just seems like a time to mention it, but yeah,
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to. We don't
No,
have to
I mean, I
belabor it.
think they're, they set us up to there are some teasing things with the pit girl, the
The
necklace,
necklace is a big part
the
of that.
costumes and Vans shoes and
Yeah.
all these things. And I was kind of struck on this rewatch by how many seeds they had already planted for things and how much it felt like they had already figured out. And that's even on a really fundamental level, and I know we've mentioned this before, it's visible in the opening credits because you see scenes from episodes that go pretty late
Hmm.
into the season in the
Yep.
opening credits.
Yep. That's true.
Um,
That's true. Which I think is a little unfortunate. I'm not a big fan of that thing, but
well, I think with it, and I'm sure this is exactly what I said last time, but I think because it's so out of context and fast
yeah.
that it doesn't, really risk spoilering
It's a bit like
what.
the Homeland thing, where you just get
Yeah,
these like little isolated shots, but you can't really tell.
right. It's only when the episode happens you understand what you're
Yeah.
missing. Yeah.
It's not as bad as Battlestar Galactica, where it's
Right.
like, here's a bunch of shit from
Right.
this episode that you're about to
Right.
watch. Like, I
Right.
hate that. Anyway, I
But
don't
I
want to
think,
go on about it.
so like in terms of the time in the woods, it's it's really laying a foundation. It's really like getting settled these episodes, figuring out the basic stuff. Um in terms of the present day with the survivors, yeah, I mean, I guess it's also still a lot of foundational stuff. but it's a lot about Thaisa's run for
Yep.
state senate.
Which is a really big deal to her in
Yeah,
this season.
she becomes, yeah, well, as we know, she becomes a really important and active public servant once she's elected.
Well, that's actually a thing. Like, are they gonna address that in season three? Like, are they gonna like show her
No,
doing like state senatorial
no, they're
work?
not gonna show her on the floor voting.
Are you
Yeah,
planting a flag
yeah.
and saying like, what's she
The
gonna do?
floor,
Resign, or they just won't even talk about
the
it?
floor belongs to the junior state senator, Thaisa Turner. No, we're not gonna see any governing.
Okay, I think that's a valid prediction. So yeah, since you mentioned the title sequence, that's another thing I wanted to say about the organic development of the show. Like, it's interesting how the first two episodes do not have a title sequence. They actually just like roll through and
Yeah,
they show the credit, but like that's it. And then in the third episode is the first time we get the title, which becomes the title sequence for the rest of the show. And it's great. I love
it's good.
the
Yeah,
title sequence is fantastic. I love the music they did for it. It's like that that's wild. It's got some crazy ass odd times. It sounds so like chaotic and it perfectly fits the
yeah,
tone of the
it
show.
does.
Though that they did a great job on that. And if they didn't have it for the pilot, oh well. But I just think it's interesting that like like with a lot of shows, the whole thing is a package right away, but here you can really see it like building over time,
Yeah. I mean,
where
the
like
music on the
pieces
show in
can fall into
general is
place.
brilliant,
It
and
is very good.
yeah, the
Totally
theme
agree.
music is great.
Not just the needle
Dynamic, fantastic.
drops, like the
Yeah,
extra stuff. I really
yeah,
like all of the they have this like I don't know what to call it, sort of like vocalizing creepy thing that
yeah,
they throw
yeah,
in, which I think is like
yeah. I think the
really
subtitles call it
effective.
"Eerie Women
Yeah,
Vocalizing."
Harry Potter vocalized. Yeah, ooh, like it's like
Yeah,
that kind of
it's really
thing.
well done.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, no, I mean, in general, like the show's well done. And that includes the pilot. Like the pilot is still
Yeah,
very good, even though like all the pieces weren't in place yet. I mean, that was true for Lost too. Like if you watch the Lost pilot, you can see the way they frame the flashbacks and stuff like is different from how they did it later. They kind of over time like kind of worked out how that thing would work. And yeah, I feel like over time they sort of realized like how they wanted to frame the show. And part of it might just be that like once we're oriented, we don't need the stuff that they're doing in the first couple episodes to just like get us on that principal character they interview.
oh, right.
It's just like it's kind of weird because like he's not even like a character in the show at all, you
Uh-huh.
know.
Yeah, I love he's like, you know, you're not supposed to say things like this, but some of these kids, it wouldn't really matter if they died. But these girls
They
are
were special.
special.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Oh,
totally
that's
forgot about
great.
that.
Actually, that reminds me. I think we actually do see Adult Alley in the briefly in one of those interview
We
segments.
do, but it's very,
It's
very
it,
brief.
it's very brief. It's very brief, but it's funny
And
that
you would
they
never think
bring
that
her
she's
back
coming back, but
at
but
the
she
end.
is. She's
Yeah,
coming back in a big
in a very
way.
memorable way,
Um
indeed. Very in a very New Jersey
Yeah,
way.
yeah, and what's his name? Is at the as a kid at the
Oh yeah,
party.
Randy. Yeah,
Randy.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
Randy is like definitely one of those like very notable minor characters
Yeah.
who plays a big role for how little he really matters in the grand scheme of
Yeah.
things. But yeah, it's funny that they rope that into this flashback stuff, and they do establish like his connection to Jeff, and like it kind of all makes sense, but you don't
Yeah.
really. It feels like a throwaway thing, you know.
They're all perfect. And as the kids are perfect, the kid actors are perfect, but the adult actors, you know, the Misty and Natalie dynamic is
Oh
fucking
yeah, yeah,
spot on.
yeah,
Every scene is perfect.
yeah.
The
They play off
the
each other really well.
interactions that they have with Thaisa, like especially like Natalie and Thaisa, like those
Yeah,
are
yeah.
They're so different. It puts Natalie, because you see Natalie with Misty and you get this idea of Natalie,
Yeah.
and then you see her on the phone with Thaisa and it's like totally different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who
And then
has like paid for her rehab and stuff. So they have a
yes.
very different dynamic. She's a lot more like conciliatory and sort of what's the word? Uh you know,
Almost like beaten down.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
Thaisa is just so
Yeah.
forceful.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
And
like
you get a hint at all this history.
it's implied that yeah, like they've been through this and Tice has had it. And she's like, "You're calling me from jail, like really?
Yeah.
Like, and you want me to like, oh, come on, enough already? Like,
Yeah.
Jesus, like,
Yeah, and then meanwhile
get
we
your
see
shit
all
together."
this stuff with all these scenes with Shauna that have nothing to do with what's going on with it's like Thaisa and Shauna both have a whole each
They have their own
individually have their own
worlds.
worlds going on.
Yeah, totally.
And then Natalie and Misty and so then when they're like, I'm calling Shauna
Yeah,
it's just yeah. Oh,
yeah.
it's so good.
Yeah, it's like as part of the way they're introduced. Like, so Natalie is in this rehab place in LA as we open the show as an adult, and based on what happens later, the implication is she gets the postcard, decides that Misty sent the postcard, and goes to like hunt down Misty with a car with a like
Rifle.
rifle in the trunk. And like that's how they sort of get to, and that's sort of why so Natalie's in this motel because she's not like living, she doesn't have like a place there like the rest of them do because they actually still live there, in this New Jersey place that's I think a fictional place. And so yeah, I feel like that's how, and Misty is, she's this like true crime like among her other attributes, like that's a thing she's into. And so like Natalie comes and she's like, interested in this postcard. She's like, oh cool, like we can like team up, like solve this mystery. We can go like talk to Travis together. And so yeah, they become this little like team investigation team. It's a great dynamic, but I feel like that's is sort of like that's why they end up like together, whereas the other two are like off in their own world. Of course,
Right.
Shonda never gets a postcard for reasons that you know
Right.
we learn later. And Thaisa gets one, but of course, yeah, she's wrapped up in this whole like getting like to say as well as the Sammy stuff, which is
The
also
Sammy
a big
stuff.
part.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with Sammy? Spoiler alert, nothing's wrong with Sammy. Sammy is being totally normal.
Yeah, poor Sammy.
Um, like, yeah,
Yeah.
if I were Sammy, I'd probably be behaving even worse than he is. But anyway, that so yeah, that's something I wanted to say about the show. I think the show, and I will probably come up with more examples as we go on, but I feel like the show is good. And this isn't a thing you have to do, and they don't always do this, but I feel like they illustrate this a lot. I know it's a long preamble, which is like giving you a situation that's kind of like a cliche or like something you've seen before, but then like the thing they do with it is not the thing you've seen before.
Yeah.
So, just to give a couple examples of that, well, the Sammy story is an example of that. Sammy's story is set up to be a story of like some kind of disturbed or possessed child, like, ooh, what's wrong with Sammy? Like,
Yeah. He mutilated his
yeah,
doll.
he mutilated his doll. He painted Spill outside and lied about it. He thinks there's some lady in the tree saying his name. Like that's all weird. He's like hitting a kid because she calls Thaisa a cannonball.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, it feels like it's that kind of story, almost like The Shining or something, like
Yeah.
this kid who's like in touch with some creepy thing and like they have to deal with it. But it's like it turns out no, it's actually Thaisa who's doing all the weird shit and
Mhm.
he's just dealing with it,
Yeah.
in the best way he can as a pretty young child, and it's like in retrospect, it's like, oh, it wasn't that. And then another example of that is Shauna and Jackie. like the Shauna and Jackie dynamic is one that has been portrayed in many things. And the normal thing, I feel like the normal thing that would happen is like you have Jeff and Jackie, and you have Shauna having a crush on Jeff, but like she's like the nerdy one and blah blah blah. And then like maybe she has like a like a makeover or something. And then he's like, oh wow. And then, like they get together at the end. Like that's sort of like the way
Yeah.
that normally goes, but it's not that. It's like he's already into her as she is.
Right.
She didn't need to change herself to be attracted to it, and so it's
Mhm.
like it flips the dynamic would, or it could even be the other way, where he's cheating on Jackie, he's cheating on Shauna with Jackie. Like you could do it that way too,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
It subverts
yeah, it's
expectations.
like
Yeah.
not it when you open the show, like you're expecting it to go a certain way, and it's like, oh, it's not that at all. It's
Yeah.
it's the opposite of what you would expect. So anyway, that's just another example of like the thing where it's like, okay, like I think I get what you're doing here, but it's like, yeah. So anyway, I appreciate that. It's not, it gives you the possibility of cliches, but then it finds a way to like swerve around them.
Yeah.
And that makes it engaging, and it fits with the characters. And I guess since we're talking about these episodes, I do think like one of the most complete things about season one is the Shauna Jackie dynamic. Like the way that they relate to, we see how they start off, before the plane crash. you know we also see how Shauna thinks about, of course, part of it is like we don't actually know what happened, so there's some vagueness there because they don't want to tell us everything, but we do
Right.
see that in a way she's haunted by Jackie still. She sees Jackie multiple times in these episodes, and through the flashbacks, like gradually you see them building up to this big confrontation that happens at the end that really leads to Jackie's death, and also the stuff in season two, which is like another level of I don't know what to call it. It's a bit pathological what happens in season two, the like making up her
Yeah.
corpse and like then
Yeah.
like eating
It's
her
fucked
ear
up.
and stuff. Like it gets real crazy, but it all kind of ties in, like getting, like Shauna actually coming out with like, here's how I actually feel like I'm treated by you, and like they never really talked about it openly. And of course Jackie realizing, well, there's also like a bit of betrayal there, with Jeff like hiding that and stuff, like that is a betrayal of the friendship, even if like in other ways like Jackie doesn't treat her like, an equal.
Yeah.
She treats her like a subordinate, like someone who is beneath her, is like
Yeah.
someone who should follow her advice, someone who she should tell how to wear, what to wear and stuff. Like they have that scene, it's
Yeah.
like, I'll wear what I want, like it's like
Right.
the beginning of that, like I'm gonna be my own person. I don't need to be in your shadow. I don't need to be your sidekick,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. Yeah, and the whole thing that we find out later about the college,
Yes, that's part of it too.
yeah.
Because Jackie has that line, we're gonna go to Rutgers and it's
Uh-huh.
gonna be great, and you're gonna be my fucking sidekick again, just like
Yeah.
you are in high school. And yeah, and it's like, meanwhile, like she knows like that's not actually what I'm gonna do. And
Yeah.
that's part of the big confrontation at the end as well,
Yeah.
like I don't want to go to Rutgers and you never even asked me about it. And like I think it's an interesting thing because there is like underlying it, there is a real friendship there, but it is also toxic. I don't know. I think they walk that line nicely,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's something I appreciate about it. And also the actor plays Jackie is British, and I failed to notice. I've been listening really hard in all these scenes, and I'm like, damn, I cannot hear it. I keep listening, and I'm like, yeah, I really would not expect that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a minor point, but
That's interesting. Um, yeah, so a couple things that in terms of mystery wise, that rewatching this first half of the season made me re-intrigued about what were like the guy in the attic
Yep.
and the relationship to the seance scene
Yeah.
when Javi asks, "Are we all gonna die
The
here?"
seance.
The seance. I don't know why you said that,
The
but
seance. I was trying to make it a. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
make it
A
what?
part
Oh,
of the
a
sound.
scene.
Yeah, yeah. The scene
Seance
of the
scene. Yeah,
seance.
yeah, got it.
Anyway,
Okay.
the saying. The okay. Anyway.
Okay. Um, like when Javi asks, "Are we all gonna die here?" And Shauna's holding the pendulum, and up to this point has been pretty clearly just uh, you know,
Bullshitting.
yeah, right.
Kind of joking around in a way.
Right, right. And I don't believe in seances, so I
Yeah.
just put my cards on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it makes this infinity symbol. And then the window blows open,
Yep.
and then and it we see Lottie, you know, I don't know, overtaken in some sense.
Seemingly possessed by
Seemingly
the spirit of cabin guy. I mean, that's how they portray it.
yeah, yeah. It's who, and she's speaking French after Shauna has said Jacques
Right.
for his name for absolutely no
Seemingly, that's the only
reason.
reason.
So, there's a whole we could pick that apart for sure. But my actual question is, I mean, not to be answered, but to sort of like, what is the significance of this infinity sign? Who was that guy? And then this idea that adult Natalie has said to adult Travis that we brought it back, like, the what is it? I
Yeah.
mean, I guess it's the central question of the whole thing
Yeah.
is already at play here. Like, what is it? What exactly is its power? And then how does that connect
The
to
symbol too.
this? Yeah, the
That's part of
symbol.
that whole thing.
Uh-huh. And how does it connect to what we are already getting, even though we don't know yet what it is that we're seeing, of Thais as an adult with the bad one? Because
Yeah.
we see the eyeless guy, all that stuff's there, and we see
Yep.
her see the eyeless guy at her press conference.
Yeah. 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 When she goes off the cards and like
Mm-hmm.
does that thing. Yeah. 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 I was wondering about breaking Allie's shin as well, because I do feel like they portray that, as like a character trait,
Yeah.
she's like very driven and very like competitive and like willing to do what it takes to win. Like it feels like it's going along, you know? So I'm like, and I do think the show in general like is a bit it's a bit blurry sometimes, like what the line is there between the two. I think intentionally so, but it did make me wonder, just looking back, at the time, like, is there some influence there, of the bad one or whatever you want to call like the part of Taisa that does that stuff, whether it's really a separate person or
Yeah.
it's just another side of her, another part of her, or
Right. And what does that even mean?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we've really learned that yet. Like we see the Eyeless guy more in season two, and there's the like she's going to the trees with the symbol, and there's that whole thing, and but it's still kind of hanging in the air, like what exactly the deal is with that.
Yeah.
So, and the eyeless guy too, this thing from her grandmother. I mean, that flashback is so interesting, but like, I still don't know what to make of it exactly. It's just it comes out of nowhere. It's like what, like all of a sudden, like, don't take my eyes. Like, what the what? Like what?
Yeah.
And she sees it, and it's like I don't know. I still have no idea how to take that stuff.
Yeah.
Is weird. The seance scene, I think, like, you can read it, in a relatively realistic way. I mean, when I initially watched the show, I wasn't inclined to think that way, but I think when we see more of Lottie in season two, like I'm ready to believe that it was some kind of wild delusion, you know? Um, that's like part of her like running out of medication and stuff. And like she
Yeah.
was already on edge about the cabin,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, Another thing I was gonna say about the cabin and like Cabin Guy is there is this extra episode that they filmed for season two that may or may not ever see the light of day, but I do expect that that episode contained, maybe it'll just be like a Blu-ray extra or whatever, some information about the Cabin Guy. And one thing I noticed in these episodes, I mean, we talked about it, but I just want to say it out loud, is that there's a gun there, like some kind of rifle or shotgun or something,
Yeah.
right next to him in the chair when he's dead up in the
Yeah.
attic. And like, I do think the implication is that he shot himself.
Yeah, I agree.
He's like a Radzinski type character,
I
you
agree the
know?
implication is that he shot himself, and the most practical explanation for what happens in the attic during the seance is that, as you point out, Lottie has been on edge about the cabin since she got there and was wigged out about the guy. And there's like some wind. It's a drafty attic.
Yeah.
Shauna's trying to make the slicing symbol that means no. There's some wind that's interfering with the pendulum. And once it's gotten a little boost, it's like difficult to get it to go right, and then it
Mhm.
blows open. The fact that Shauna has said Jacques plants that idea of French,
Yeah.
and there's this whole blood thing, this whole episode that whole episode because of the
Uh,
menstruation,
yes. The episode is called Blood Hive,
blood hive,
which is the
which,
something
yeah,
Travis
Travis
says.
says, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, all the pieces are there for her to translate her disturbance. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, actually, I should bring that up. That is a very realistic thing. Like, so there's no scenes on Lost where they talk about having periods, for example,
Yeah,
even though like it should have been happening, for sure.
I
So
agree.
anyway, I just think that's a thing that like, Yellow Jackets will meet that head on. Like, yep,
Yeah.
that's the thing. They got to deal with this because they're out in the wilderness and it's still happening.
Yeah, I mean the fact, and this is what it takes, right, for a mainstream TV show to talk about your periods. Literally every
Yeah, yeah.
character has to be a
Yeah, yeah,
teenage
yeah.
girl.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly.
Um, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it stands out because you really don't see. I mean, it's not that no show ever talks about periods ever, but
right,
like it's yeah, it definitely addresses it more head on, and like, it's actually part of the plot that Shauna is pregnant. She's gotta like fake it by taking the
right.
blood from the animal, and Taisa sees her do it, and so then she knows, like it's a whole thing. Oh yeah, Lottie's line to Shauna seemed to imply that she knew
It's in you
too.
already.
And it's like
You know,
you could read it as it isn't that, but like we're definitely invited to think that, I think, at the
we're certainly invited to think that. I mean, it seems like Shauna interprets it that
yeah.
way.
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way.
But I think there's room for ambiguity on
Very
that.
much so. Very much so. And I think, yeah, based on going forward, and it's like the fake therapy and all that shit is like, okay, like it doesn't have to mean that at all. And clearly a game with this show is like what they want us to think things mean versus like what they actually like. Travis actually is a perfect example of that, right? It's like we are invited, and we're invited by Natalie because she says it, to believe that Travis did not kill himself. He was actually murdered by someone, and there's the symbol there, and like, ooh, and you know, there's all this intrigue, there's stuff about the bank account and all that, at the end of the season. And I fully believed it. I fully believed it. And then like later on, it's like, no, no, I mean, like you could argue like, well, the button went wrong, blah, 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 but it certainly wasn't murder. you know? It was like something close. I mean, he wanted to get close to death so he could like make contact with it. And so he was at least like playing around with suicide, if not like, fully going all the way there. He was definitely taking that risk, and that's what ended up happening. So, it's like it's the kind of thing where you get all this intrigue, and it feels like there's this like secretive group and they did a ritual sacrifice, and it's like, nah, that's not the story at all. It's much more grounded than you might have expected.
But at this stage, we're still living in mystery.
Very much so, very much so. And it's not like no mysteries remain, but I just bring that up as an example of like, it's like the seance. Initially I'm like viewing it in like kind of a maximally supernatural way, and now like I'm inclined to kind of go the other way,
Yeah.
and like see it more as like a manifestation of like what Lottie's going through and how she's reacting to the situation they're in the cabin and all that. But I do think there is still mysteries about Cabin Guy. Like, why did he shoot himself? Did he carve all those symbols? And if so, why?
Yeah.
Like, did
Yeah.
he just lose his mind out there? Like, is it as simple as that? Like, what actually happened? And then another thing I was gonna say is about Javi. Like I feel so much more pathos for Javi now than I did in season one, because I know where he's headed. And so like when I see him in these scenes, I'm just like, oh Javi.
It's really sad.
Oh Javi.
He's
It's like he goes through all these like sad scenes. He's got all this like he's got conflict with Travis because of the different ways they're dealing with their father's death, who was the coach. Like that's why they're there in the first place. And so like he's kind of and he's not part of the team, and he's like disconnected from Travis. So it's just like he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really
It's a really
sad.
sad
He's on his own.
situation.
I think the scene with Shauna where he comes upon her sitting in the creek, writing in her
Yeah.
journal, that's a really lovely scene. It's nice when he gets the ring, but yeah, he's on the periphery of the show, kind of functionally, but he's also just on the I mean, you can imagine that he's on the periphery of everything that's going on here.
Yeah.
I don't know how he spends his days, but it's
Yeah.
very, yeah,
Yeah, the
pathos is
ring
the
thing was
word.
sort of like Travis on his redemption arc, trying to
Yeah,
make up for what he did earlier and like give him something and like show that he cared and all that, like
yeah,
because there's a whole thing with the gum and like you got to spit out the gum and like
yeah,
it's a whole thing. But yeah, it's like, because we're past the like, is Adam Javi, and like we don't have to worry about that, so you can really understand like what his whole thing was. So
yeah.
anyway, it
It's
is a
really clear watching it again, knowing what we know, that the writers want you 100% want you to think that
yeah.
Adam is Javi.
They made a very explicit like comparison, and the way they cut it implied that too, and the fact that he's Adam Martin and Javier Martinez, like it's just like, yeah, of
Yeah,
course they wanted you to think that 100%. And I mean, it's even possible that like they thought about actually doing it and just decided that now it's better to not do that for various reasons. I think they were right. you know
yeah.
but yeah, anyway, that's something that really plays differently when you watch it again. um I love Misty as geriatric nurse. Like
Oh
obviously
my
like in
god.
real life, like please fire her, but like
Fire.
on the show it's very amusing.
Yeah.
You get like Gracie, the scene with the kids where like she like steps on
Oh
the
yeah, the trick or
yeah,
treating.
the trick or treating thing,
Right.
and she steps on the thing to make it look like the old lady was dying or something. It's like, Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean the scene in an earlier episode when she vindictively one of the patients like knocks her food on the floor, and so she's like, "You know what? I don't think you need your morphine."
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah, yeah,
"Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah, yeah,
This sick fuck."
yeah,
And
yeah.
taking a patient with her to a bar so that she can spend
All
the
right.
night.
All right. Oh, I love that a lot. You remind me of my daughter. No one likes her either.
I love that. I love that.
Really, it's really hilarious. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, she's like so out of line in so many of those
Yeah.
scenes. It's ridiculous. But you know, as the character, very entertaining. It's I mean, in a way I feel that way about a lot of the characters on the show. It's like in real life, I might stay away, but on the show,
Oh my god.
it's very enjoyable.
When Natalie when she and Natalie are in jail and she goes to take her phone call and she gets back and Natalie's like, "Who did you call your bird?" She's like, "Oh, ha ha ha." Like if it doesn't know how to use the phone yet.
Oh my god, yes, I love that. I
She's
totally love
so
that.
good. My god.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Clearly, yeah. In terms of that adult side of the plot, like yeah, it's always a treat. And yeah, like
Yeah, the casting director who's like, yeah, yeah, I got it. We need Christina Ricci and what's her fucking name?
Juliette Lewis.
And Julia
Yeah,
Lewis. And
yeah,
just like the look of surprise when people say that out loud. Like what a combination. I mean, I
yeah.
always think I don't anymore because of just watching this show. But when I first watched this, I mean, my frame of reference for Christina Ricci was Adam's Family,
Yep, me too. Me too. Me
and
too. And it is like nothing like that performance. It's a completely different
yeah,
character.
but she does look very much the
Oh,
same.
for sure, for sure, for sure. Except for the
She
hair,
just
but
doesn't age. Yeah, it's a different wig, but other than that,
yeah, 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 yeah. No, totally, totally. Yeah, yeah. No, it really is like, yeah, it plays clearly plays to her strengths. As does Julia Lewis, Natalie
mhm.
for her character. Like
Yeah, that's Julia
she
Lewis's
does her
only
thing
role.
like completely. It's funny because you know, she's actually both of them started acting when they were younger, like closer to the age of the younger characters, you know.
Yeah.
So like you can actually see them
Yeah,
when
it's like
they're
now and then.
that age. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It's funny because like the younger actors who play them don't really look anything like they looked at that age.
Right.
Even though like they do a good job, I think, of like
Yeah.
convincing you that they are those characters. Like I do appreciate how they make that work. Like even though like in real life, like that's not right at all. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. But yeah, I think you're the casting is a huge strength of the show. It would not be the same if they hadn't succeeded in both time periods, like because it's not easy. I mean, it really could have gone wrong, and
Yeah.
um they really got those they really got good actors for both of those things I think that's always a tricky thing to do, you know. Obviously they didn't use it as much, but like there are examples on Lost where you see the characters at a younger age and they have a different actor, and like I don't think any of those, with the exception of Ben maybe, who's like as convincing, you know,
Yeah.
as these characters are. You know, I feel like they usually feel like, well, you had to cast quick and like it's
Right,
okay.
right. Because it was a much smaller
Yeah,
amount of screen time,
yeah,
less
exactly.
like
Yeah, that's the thing. Ben does get more screen time, so maybe that's like younger Ben. Like maybe that's just part of why it's more convincing.
yeah.
You know, but even the younger Rousseau, you know, the younger Eloise, like I'm fine with them. I don't think they do a bad job, but I think the continuity isn't as good,
Yeah.
you know, as it is here. And I know from reading behind the scenes stuff that they actually did spend time with the adult actors trying to make sure they like kind of
Mm,
understood their mannerisms and
that makes sense.
tried to incorporate them, you
Yeah.
know, to a degree in their performance. And also the young Thais is great. I feel like
Hmm.
she's been like a TV star of the last 10 years because she was also on Leftovers and
Yeah.
also very good on Leftovers, playing a huge part
Yeah, she's
on
great.
that.
She's great in both. Yeah.
So yeah, I had to bring that up because yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to see her in more
I
stuff.
really yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally nailing that part. Okay. So, yeah, so what else do I want to bring up here? What haven't I talked about? Let's see. Blah blah blah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
this
talked
is what
about
happens when we don't go scene by scene. We
that.
just kind of jump
Yeah, I
in,
don't have a
whatever
specific
comes to
structure,
mind.
so we're just jumping
Uh,
around. Oh yeah, yeah. I feel like this whole thing with it's interesting. See, here's where I think they could have cut Jessica Roberts because of the Thaisa campaign and the opponent doing this ad. You know, I feel like like we get enough of an idea from that that there are rumors swirling, but like no one really knows. And the scene where she like interacts with that like rich woman, like whoever that was, you know, at that
the
party
donor, yeah,
that she wants to
the
like
potential
get
donor.
her
Yeah.
endorsement and her support and then she's like, okay, but you got to tell me what happened out there. It's like, go fuck yourself. Like, you know, you realize like there, you know, like I still want to win, but like that's a line I'm not gonna cross for you. You don't have the right to ask that. And so
Yeah.
like you get both like what people know and what they want to know, and you get I mean, that is just Thaisa, but I feel like in a way they're all kind of like this. That like that's we don't talk. We can talk about it with each other. We're gonna talk about that with outsiders.
Right, and that's the whole thing with Jessica Roberts. Like, I need to know if anybody's gonna
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
and what it would take to get them to talk.
yeah.
And it yeah,
Which makes sense. It makes sense that she would do that.
yeah. Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not against that idea. I just think like there's no follow up there. You know, that's where it falls short for me. Like then it's like, and now what? You know, like so like in a way I feel like it could have just been like, oh yeah, remember when whatever came by and offered you a book deal, I you know I was checking up on you. Like they could have just done that and it would have served that function without you know having to have this whole character that then they have to deal with, you know,
Yeah.
in a way that's kind of just like, can we move you out of the way and like move on? You know, it just it feels like they reach a certain point and then it's like, okay, there's we have nowhere to go from here because the point is like they're not talking.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Eh, yeah. I mean, I guess it's debatable whether the introduction of Jessica Roberts was worth doing. I mean, it pushes Misty to an extreme point later on.
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And it creates a something that ratchets up the stakes because now there's a body.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But then,
Um,
like, Shauna's gonna do a murder of Adam at the end of the season, so it's
yeah,
already built in with that plot, which, like, I don't object to, you know, because I do feel like that goes somewhere. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's for Misty specifically, it does show how far she's going to go, which
Hmm.
isn't that shocking, at least to me. But of course, I'm in my own head, so you know, like initially maybe when I watched it the first time, maybe I didn't really know. You know, she's like kind of a disturbing character, but it's like, yeah, but will she actually do murder? Like, yep,
Yeah, I mean,
100%
it's
she
pretty
will.
and to do it in this really methodical way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. In a diabolical way, I would say. It's like I'm
yeah,
gonna plant this thing
yeah,
that's poison that I'm expecting you to like it's like, wow, that's a lot. I mean, it fits
yeah.
though.
It
That's like
does. It
totally in
does.
character. So
Yeah.
I can't argue with anything that happens. It's just it doesn't seem like it matters very much in
Hmm.
the grand scheme of things because
Yeah,
I do
it
feel like
doesn't.
there's enough stuff with Misty that could have
Yeah, but
conveyed.
I mean, once you start thinking along those lines, it's like, yeah, but we're watching a TV show. There's a lot of stuff happens that we don't strictly need.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Fair enough. I guess I just it feels built up more than I think it
Yeah,
merits compared to some other things. I don't know.
sure.
That's just a minor issue I have with the early part of the show. Yeah, another thing I wanted to mention that I feel like is like also a bit like not quite there for me is Natalie's flashback. You know, this whole thing with this like abusive father character is
Yeah,
very like one dimensional. I feel like
Yeah.
Usually the show doesn't do that. I mean, that's the point I was making earlier. Like, I would expect them to not do something so cliche, but they just like lean right in, you know. Now, the ending where he like shoots himself in the face isn't what you would
Yeah.
expect. So I'll give him that, for sure. And I don't actually mind a lot of the flashback. It's really that father character I don't like. It
Yeah.
just it feels like there's nothing there. It's this like it's
I
just
agree.
this
It's very
ball of
stereotypical.
antagonism
Yeah.
that has no real humanity at all.
Yeah.
Now, again, as a counterpoint, it is true that we don't get a lot from any of their parents.
Yeah.
So it's not like, like I'm thinking like Shauna's parents, did we I don't even think they have any scenes with Shauna's parents. We do meet Jackie's parents as adults, in the adult timeline
Right.
briefly. And we get Thais's grandmother,
Right.
and I think they show her parents briefly, but like it isn't they aren't major
Yeah.
characters. And you don't see Misty's parents either.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking about that with Misty when we saw somebody's flashback of like at home scene. There's the thing with Lottie's parents and these different family scenes, but it made me wonder
oh yeah,
what
Lottie
the
gets yeah,
yeah,
that's true. Yeah, yeah, you get a bit with that. I mean, you still don't really get her parents as characters, but they are present more so than some of their parents.
yeah,
So it's a thing. Yeah. And they do kind of talk about that. But it does seem like, she's from this like wealthy family and it seems like she's kind of neglected. You see her sitting alone at the table, and we're gonna get that scene later where she predicts the car crash or whatever.
yeah,
um but that isn't from these episodes, so we'll talk about that in the next podcast, right?
yes,
Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to say that because yeah, like the stuff with Kevin, like I think there's a lot of pathos there too, also
yeah,
knowing where Kevin ends up, which is totally unfair.
yeah,
If it was fucking that other guy, his partner, in the trunk,
yeah,
I'd be like, okay, right? But it's like, it's Kevin who ends up in the trunk, and that guy survives. Like, really, that guy? Like, Jesus Christ,
yeah.
Because he's so desperate. I don't know if desperate's the right word, but like needy or something. He wants to make this connection with Natalie. He's willing to like cross lines to do that, and you see that like the formative stage of that in the flashback.
Yeah.
And so like that stuff was all fine. I have no problem with that part of the scene, and I like the younger Natalie too. Like it's just, yeah, anyway, whatever. I just had to bring up that one thing.
Yeah.
um, yeah. Oh, yeah. I love the scene where Shauna and Adam go to the liquor store,
Ha!
and she convinces this guy to go in and buy liquor for them. So they're pretending like they're, underage, and it's like
Yeah,
this illicit thing,
yeah.
even though they've already been in a bar having martinis in the hotel bar, like,
That's
like,
not the point. They're recovering the high
yeah,
school experiences
exactly,
or
exactly.
college
When she
experiences.
goes up to the guy and the way she pitches the thing, that's just
It's
like,
so
I
funny.
mean, like Melanie Linsky in general is fantastic on the show, like 5 stars, but like I love
Yeah,
that scene so deeply. I had to bring it up.
it's
The little
so
hand
good.
gesture when she says alcohol, like it's a secret
Like
thing.
whispering it. Yeah.
Like, oh, I love it. I love it
Yeah.
so much.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic when when she and Jeff are doing the role play thing and
Oh,
she assumes a British accent
for no
for no
reason.
reason
Why are
as
you
the furniture
British?
salesperson. And then
She
the
wants to return something. It's like,
yeah,
wait, why
she
are
did
you
why you're
why are you
returning
returning?
something. Oh my god, it's so funny.
Yeah,
Yes.
those scenes are very good
It's
too.
so good. And then of course the piece de resistance, the morning after Halloween
Oh,
when
100%. Oh, that's a perfect example. I'm so glad you brought it up. Go ahead.
no, please, you do it.
So yeah, that's actually another example of what I wanted to what I was
Oh, if you
saying
think you know where
earlier.
it's going,
But yeah,
yeah.
but it's actually, to me, it's that on two levels. because so the first level is, so it's like Halloween. Kelly is like, I'm gonna go out. She's like, no, you're not. She's like, yeah, I am. She just does it anyway, right? And then like by crazy coincidence, they go to the same party, and so Callie sees her there with Adam, and it's like so she realized what's going on. But then there's this before they go home, they have a scene where
Yeah.
then
It's
Callie's like
Tinder.
established to be on ecstasy, but she actually like she expresses sympathy
Mhm.
for Shauna. Like she shows that
Yeah.
she cares and she appreciates that like it's hard for her what she's been through and what she's like currently dealing like that she's like somehow unhappy or unfulfilled or what have you, and like it's like they have this bond,
Yeah.
and you think it could lead to a better interaction between them going forward, right?
Yeah.
That's one level where you think you know where it's
Yes.
going.
Yes.
Then her turn the next morning is, guess what? I got blackmail on you now, and you're gonna let me do whatever I want.
Yep.
And you think that's the turn. Oh, okay. So like the connection
Mhm.
last night, we're gonna forget about that now, and it's just gonna be like a tool to hold over my head and threaten me with. And then then the next level is no, 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 no. Go ahead. Go ahead and tell him. See what
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go
Yeah.
through? Here's what it's gonna be.
Mhm.
And she draws up
Yeah.
this elaborate scenario. Yeah,
And
that
I have no doubt you will be able to give him that dating advice because most of those girls are going to be your age.
there's so many great lines in that scene. Oh my god. Yeah, no, that I think that might be the best Shauna scene for the adult Shauna in season one. I absolutely love that scene.
So good.
It's incredible. And then she calls Jeff in
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, I'm ready to call your
Yeah.
bluff right now. Go
Yeah.
for it. Do it. Do it. I dare you.
Chef, your daughter has something to tell you.
Yeah. I
It's
love
so
it. I
good. Yeah.
love it. Oh my god. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
I also
amazing.
really like so this is a very different Shauna thing from this arc, but when she serves the rabbit chili and chef's like, you were kidding about the rabbit, right? And she's like, and then
Yeah.
and of course we find out later that Jeff has read all of those
Yeah.
journals. He knows what
Yeah.
happened and
Yeah.
he still sticks by her. He doesn't, hey, he could have solved his money problems by turning around and selling the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Um
Yeah. No, he's
he's a good guy.
very loyal.
He deserves better.
Loyal to a fault, you might say.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, totally. Yeah, there's you get another glimpse of that later this season when they go to Jackie's parents, and
Yeah.
Jackie's parents are like coming down on Shauna like really hard,
Yeah.
and like he jumps in, it's like you realize like, oh, okay, like yeah, he's like really committed to this.
Yeah,
Like
he is.
it's not just like some kind of weird, some random thing from high school that's like, gone by the wayside. Because they are having relationship problems at the beginning, and like that is
Yeah.
part of the point of the therapy and like why they do this like fantasy role play thing and all that,
Mhm.
but his problems are he's having money problems at the furniture store. It's really not to do with Shauna per
Right.
se, you
Right.
know. And her problems are yeah whatever, but yeah, I agree. Like I think it does play differently when he knows the whole time, and also like it's a preview of the fact that like she becomes the like de facto butcher care,
Yeah,
like
it happens really early.
yeah, she makes the
Um,
decision to like go up and like cut the throat,
yeah.
and so you see like that developing over these 5 episodes even,
Yeah.
she tries to show Jackie, how to like pop this bone out, and Jackie's like, oh, no, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. That's go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's gross.
It's all you. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it either. So I understand. I would probably be someone who died and got eaten. realistically, there's no
Yeah,
way
you'd
I
be the
would have what it
first.
takes to survive out
Yeah.
there. It's
When they were even just a
not
little bit
me.
they're not even out of trail mix from the airplane yet, they're already eating you.
Here you go. Have have a have a calf or something.
Ooh, yeah, calf.
We can start with that. It'll be that Monty Python sketch where they just like eat bits of each other
Uh-huh.
gradually. You can have my gammy leg. Okay. So let's see. Oh yeah, and then we have okay. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything big here. Yeah, I think we talked about that. Yeah, so we have yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention was the I always feel like these pods are weird. Though there is sort of a pan, but we have Misty giving Natalie this supposedly, what is this supposed to be, like an aromatizer or something?
A
I don't know.
diffuser.
Diffuser, thank you. Sorry, I was a little too
An
French.
aromatherapy diffuser.
Aromatisé. Okay, anyway. Um yeah, but it has like a camera in it, so she's
Yeah,
like
smart.
spying on what's going on there. And it, comes into play later in a more direct way, but like that's a thing. Um uh uh and I think in a way it's a way because in general, like Natalie doesn't want anything to do with Misty. She's trying to get Misty to go away constantly.
Yeah.
And it's only by sheer force of will that Misty maintains her presence in Natalie's world. And so, yeah, like clearly that's what she was realizing and planning to do. Because that's the thing about Misty that I think is also interesting, that she is an outcast and she acts like she doesn't know that, but she does know that.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of times she sort of pretends like she's blissfully unaware of how she's perceived,
Yeah.
but and there are scenes where it becomes clear that she's not unaware of that. She 100% knows, and she's just like finds ways to deal with it and like get around it or whatever. Um, I do like the scene where it definitely feels like a preview for the Elijah Wood stuff in season 2, where they go to meet
Yeah.
this guy
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
murder board and like get the police files, I guess. Um
That's so funny. You're right. It is Elijah Wood. In my head, it was Patton Oswald.
I mean, Pat Oswalt could have played that character, but yeah, no, it's Elijah Wood. And then they do this gambit where like they siphon gasoline and spray it
That's
on
so
him and
good.
threaten to light him on fire because
It's really good.
just to get the thing.
It's
Anyway,
so
I really enjoyed that
intense.
scene,
Yeah.
so I just had to mention it because
Yeah.
it's a scene where they do some legit teamwork.
It is. Yeah.
Like they both have something to
Yeah. And I
contribute.
love, and they're walking away, and Natalie's like, you should give him a call. You two have a lot in common.
Like I said, it feels like it's a setup, Like I
Yeah.
wanted to say it in the moment, like, but I was like, no, save it for the podcast. Here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, it feels like, yeah, like that's a logical place to go because we do open up with Misty on a date with this guy, and he's clearly like just weirded out by her and kind of
Yeah.
just got, of course he seems kind of weird himself.
Yeah. He
Uh,
sucks. But
and yeah, he just sucks. But yeah, and he skedaddles when Natalie's in there with the rifle. It's a very
right.
amusing little scene. But it shows like Missy trying to find someone, but it makes sense that it would be someone from that world because they are weirdos anyway. No offense to any true crime fans, but you know, I
Yeah.
feel like that's a
Well,
type,
yes. It's a
that's
type.
like so deep in that world that like you're going on boards and like trying to analyze evidence, like I get it. It's just I don't know. There's
I mean, any kind of fandom when it gets to a certain
yeah,
level becomes a
gets a
little
bit
fringy.
weird for sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think if they were gonna find someone for Misty, it makes sense that they would go down that road, and I think we'll get more on that in season 3. It certainly seems that way. That's
Yeah,
that's a big part of where they end up in season
yeah,
2 in
definitely.
the adult side of things. So and he knows all these secrets now, and obviously, like, he's fine with it.
Yeah.
They made that very clear. Actually, I think he's the one who kills Kevin, if I remember right. I think he like poisoned him. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I think he's the one that kills Kevin.
I don't remember.
Um, like I have this memory of being in the kitchen at Lottie's camp, and like he comes out
Oh, yeah.
and like gives him this like something to drink. It's a very misty move, which makes sense. But yeah, I think that's where Kevin gets poisoned. We'll see because we'll get there eventually. But
Yeah.
that's what I kind of remember. Um,
Yeah.
so
Well, one other thing, I don't have anything to say about this really, but the airplane is already
oh yeah,
in play. Laura Lee is already
reading the
intrigued by the
manual.
airplane, reading
How
the
hard can
manual.
it be?
Yeah.
And we didn't get to it in these episodes. I think it's the next one actually. But uh I mean the thing flew. I
It
think
flew, but we also get when in that introductory scene with it when it you know, when it almost runs over Jackie, Lottie says it looks at the vines
yeah.
tangling the airplane and says it didn't want him to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, so that actually made me wonder about the cabin guy's story. Like, is that part of his breakdown?
Uh-huh.
That like he was trying to leave and kept getting,
Yeah.
stopped in like various ways that could be read as supernatural or just like bad
Yeah.
luck or whatever. Like did that sort of lead to like going down this like road of like carving the symbol everywhere and eventually shooting himself? I don't know. It feels like it sort of makes sense if like at least that was a part of like whatever the breakdown was you know
Yeah.
it made me think of that. But yeah, actually I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about it. Laura Lee is one of those characters that it gets she's a B-level character, I think, in the flashbacks, but you know just below there. Like she gets a decent amount of screen time and a decent amount of character development. You know where she comes from, and I like that. And like in a way, her spirit sort of hangs over even into season 2 and so on because she has a connection with Lottie, because like she's like the de facto spiritual leader early on because she's the only one who has like specific religious
Yeah.
commitments, and
Hmm.
she's like demanding that they say some kind of prayer or whatever, like they have that. I think all that stuff is great. They have that scene with her at the party where or sorry, not the party, at the plane crash where like she admits that she said the C word about her piano teacher or whatever,
Oh,
and they all have a
right.
good laugh about that, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's
That was
it's
funnier.
it's a good
The
yeah.
plane crashed because the you you thought the C
Yes.
word.
Exactly. Right. She didn't even say it. She just thought it. And that was already a big enough transgression. But yeah, it's like
Mhm.
it's a nice scene because it shows like there is a crack in the armor there. Like she does have impure thoughts from time to
Mhm.
time, and yeah, in general, like I think that's a good like B-level character for season 1 that also like does affect the show going forward, even if she's gonna die here pretty soon in this next block,
Yeah.
in the fated plane thing. She's sort of like doing the raft plot from Lost, more or less.
Mhm.
um and obviously we know it has to fail for some reason, but like it come again, supernatural stuff is always in the air. It certainly seemed weird what happened, but I think there is a way to read it that it was just like the fuel was leaky or the plane was just in disrepair, and so like it should have flown, it should have worked, she was doing it right, but the thing just broke down and exploded. Like
Yeah.
that's how I'm inclined to read it, at
Yeah.
least now. Especially because, as I said before, no one witnesses what actually happened in the cabin, so no one's ever gonna know one way or the other. They just see it explode. So
Right.
it's sort of like. I just feel like that's, I don't know. That's the way I'm inclined to go with that. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned Laura Lee, because I think if we talk about this season, we don't mention Laura Lee, we've definitely missed something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's significant, even if it's not like the biggest thing on the show.
Yeah, one thing that I like about Laura Lee that it kind of goes to your point about the way that the show subverts the typical versions of stories is that by and large the other Yellow Jackets don't share her faith, but they're not really like rolling their eyes at her. You know, she
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
in the pilot she's like, "Coach, don't you think we should pray?" And he's like, it's just a practice." But they do it, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah. They indulge it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's true. Yeah. She's not like outcast for that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, ah, it's, that's Laura Lee's thing. Like, it's fine, whatever. You know.
Yeah, they kind of like they don't yeah, they're maybe not fully on board, but they're
Yeah.
not ridiculing her for it.
She's also like not super judgy.
Yeah.
Like characters like that are sometimes portrayed.
Yeah.
It's like it's a personal thing for her and she wants them to do certain things, but she's not like going around saying like you're all sinners and you're all going to hell. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think that also makes it like a more sympathetic character. You know,
He's definitely a sympathetic
he
character.
could
Yeah.
have been portrayed in a much more unsympathetic way. I've seen that type many times.
For sure.
So I think yeah, it's a nice way to like yeah portray that. I don't know, yeah, like hey y'all conservatives, it's a positive portrayal of a believing
Um,
Christian character.
that's why conservatives are so into this.
Aren't you into the show? Come on, what don't you like about it? I don't understand.
Name 10 things you don't like about it.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that's what I got. I don't know what
Yeah,
else.
it's no, I
So
mean,
what else?
so what else? No, I mean, I don't really have anything else for this. I mean, it's a lot of building foundation,
Yeah,
a lot of really charming scenes,
yeah. Yeah. In
characters
general, I
flash.
should say that, like, I think the show is extremely enjoyable to watch. And I think it's because it finds a very nice balance between comedy and the most serious of drama.
Yeah.
It is able to weave those two together, and I guess in that way it reminds me of like Twin Peaks or something, like that it can go to the darkest possible place, but it can also do scenes that are just really amusing.
Yeah.
And I think that makes the dark stuff more palatable because you get a break. You get these scenes that are just, yeah, just funny.
Yeah, definitely.
Even darkly funny sometimes, but still like trying to light the guy on fire, right? It's a funny scene, even
It's
though like
funny.
what they're threatening is kind of
Right.
terrifying.
But I mean, it's funny because you know that
Yeah,
there's no way they're gonna do it.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah.
exactly, exactly.
And like
Um,
what an amazing date.
oh,
Those two. Poor Jeff. Oh, Jeff. But watching Shauna and Adam on their,
oh yeah,
the liquor store mini
yep,
golf,
yep, yep. Jumping off the
jumping off the
bridge,
bridge,
yep,
like, oh my God.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That's
yeah.
like a great rom-com.
It's totally a rom com. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like all that stuff feels very light, and yet it's gonna end with a murder. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So it's like I don't know, like yeah, that's a
It's
perfect
really
encapsulation.
tragic.
It really is. It really is. Like tragic misunderstanding, which usually happens in a rom-com, but it doesn't usually lead to
It's
murder.
not usually that tragic. Yeah.
I guess you can look at that as an example of what I was talking about earlier too. It's like there's a path this is supposed to walk, and
Hmm.
it just goes right around it and does
Yeah.
something completely different
It
from
veers.
what you've seen.
Yeah. Well,
Is that
yeah,
a good place
yeah, I
to
think so.
wrap it up? All
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
hopefully whoever requested this is not totally disappointed in what
I
we've
don't think they
delivered.
will be. Looks like we've done a good
Um,
amount of time on that.
oh, it's not just quantity.
It's quality though. There was real quality in here. I'm
Um,
sure of it.
fresh new insights.
So many. But yeah, the plan is to do another one for the back half of season one, and then do another one for season two in general, just because we have already done those individual episodes. Please feel free to go back and listen to those if you want to hear really detailed scene by scene thoughts on season two. But we will do that, and just speculate a bit. So that's the plan for what's to come. But yeah, until next time,
Buzz,
buzz
buzz,
buzz
buzz.
buzz.